thing, take
And who's
pictures.
gonna clean it? Then you have to clean after each thing?
After each family.
After each
yeah.
person?
Each family?
I don't think you have to.
Oh, well, trust me, someone's gonna tell me I'm gonna have to. Like, not everyone is excited for all these things, and not everyone. is
Agreed,
the
but
same.
theoretically,
I
if
do
you're going
for
up
open
on
houses.
stage, you can't touch anything anyway.
Yeah.
Unless the families come in and stand there, you're not touching anything.
That's what Darren's, yeah, like.
And
Have
then
no,
go?
have no chairs, right?
Even if they could have the grads and live stream that.
Outside. Well, and see, we talked about that too, but that one was kind of shut down right away. Like, I'm only presenting ideas and they're telling me yay or nay, right? Like.
Who's they?
The grads. Kids. Yeah, they're a really good group. Like, they took on all the jobs, they're ready. And the only drawback of having something outside is what if it rains and then you put stuff and you go inside, then
How
we're
many,
breaking
how
all
many
the rules.
grads?
68 plus our outreach gives us 70. Really small groups. 72, possible 73.
So is outside more than 50 people now?
Well, someone said 100 today.
Oh.
I know it's not the same thing, but they had a grad class I just saw here the other day that got their picture taken outside in all their formal wear, and the whole class was like around a couple classic vehicles and stuff like this, but
Well, we're doing all of that.
70, some of that'll be.
Yeah, no, we're having a
tough.
parade and we're putting pictures up and yeah, and if we have stuff fun. The whole point is if 15,000 people can be on Jasper Ave, why can't we? And if you can open VLTs for addiction, why can't we have celebrate education?
Why don't you have it at the River Creek? You just walk down the lanes of ELTs.
Right? Like, you know, it's just sad that that's kind of where this government's at. They put those kind of things before education. And yeah, I mean, these are adults too. They're not 5-year-olds like where that spit on each other and lick each other. Well, they might be, I think, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they're a
After a
lot
few drinks,
less,
maybe.
you know.
I remember my graduation, there was a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I remember when I graduated, there might be more than that in kindergarten grad. Like, yeah, it's,
I would think that it would be the gymnasium that would be opened up. Like they said that you could take your departmentals and stuff like that.
if you wanted to.
If you wanted to. So if there was 78 kids that had to take departmentals, it wouldn't be a classroom, it'd be in the gymnasium spaced apart, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't even fit them in. They'd probably rotate them in somehow, right? They're still, the problem is they're kind of unsure and then they'll wait and see. And I mean, maybe we have to wait till August to do something, you know, and that's kind of our best case scenario is we sort of have something that looks generic or regular with that walking across the stage, receiving. I mean, you can't get up to stay 6 feet apart still. So, you know, you can't shake their hand or like you still have to be this far apart. So you really at least.
Feet though, if you're not wearing masks.
Mhm.
If you're wearing masks, you could be right next to them, right?
Yeah, well, that was my other thought. Maybe we just do it and everyone gets a mask.
Theoretically, you could have your stage, they go up, you could shake hands, you have a thing sanitizer, nobody sits down, so you'd have nothing to clean, except for the Bible technically, right? No.
And it comes, like, well, the Bibles usually come wrapped in kind of like a.
Oh, yeah, so they're individually, you're handling them up, right?
Yeah, or you just pick up your own, like you just put one on the side of the table
And they
and
pick
they
up
pick it up or whatever.
We use the garage door down there at, we use the garage door down at the MRC. You did it inside the field house, right? You could have families kind of come in groups, have 4 or 5 and just keep rotating. And then when one's done, that family goes out, the next family's ready to come in.
And that's the important part to the adults.
Yeah.
The important part to the people that have gone to school for 12 years is not that part.
Fair enough.
You know, like, so you're trying to do both, like they're looking for both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and they've made it quite clear they're looking for the other.
Okay. So Chris, we're live and ready to rock?
We've been live for the last 5 minutes.
Perfect. We've been talking about graduation here, trying to come up with a scenario that works. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, we'll start our meeting. Got our agenda in front of us. I think we do have an in camera. Is it written on here? No. So adding under 9, or sorry, 8, I guess it would become in camera legal. Any other changes? Councillor McGregor?
Can we add to the committee updates or whatever, the new one, the High Prairie District Children's Resource Council? We had our first meeting for that one that you guys had
Okay.
sent us to.
High Prairie.
District Children's Resource Council.
Wow.
I think there is an acronym, but off the top of my head, I can't remember it all in one meeting.
PDCC or something. Okay, any other changes? Motion to accept the agenda as amended. Thank you, Councillor Busk. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We'll start with CEO update. Mr. Lundy.
Your worship, and you have the notes from the directors. I just add that everyone is aware of the stage 2 updates, so administration are going to be working away at bringing forward plans on different facilities to look at opening based on the guidelines from the medical officer. The town office is considering or looking at ways they can expand our hours of operation at the same time, but we need to put in place some additional plexiglass and other items before we can open more full-time than we are.
Okay.
And I'm open to questions of council for the rest of the.
Okay. So the strongest message to start out with is we are aware that at 12:30 today that they announced stage 2 with some pulling in of stage 3 things, which affects our facilities. But to the message to the public, because we had a lot of feedback already this afternoon about people that want to get in and use our facilities, is that it's going to take us a bit of time there to figure out the logistics of how that does, notify staff, figure out scheduling, so on and so forth, make sure we have the right PPE and stuff in place. So we will do some more announcements on that in the next week or two when we have that more ironed out, correct?
That's great.
Okay, Councillor Busk.
So one of the announcements today was that there's team sports that are going to be allowed to be played. I'm guessing that our slow pitch diamonds and ball diamonds and stuff like that might be picked up in usage and stuff like that. As long as Parks is aware to take that level of service, if they are going to be used, instead of cutting grass every couple of weeks, they're going to have to be maintained a little more, I would think.
Then we will have to ensure that we have the sufficient staff to do it, because right now we don't.
There's lots to figure out. So we'll wait for those groups to contact us and see if they're going to use it to begin with. Okay, other questions? I actually have one for Kush, our project manager here. So Hilltop Reservoir, we've got, is one of the projects that we continued with. We delayed most of our capital projects, but this one was one that was already tendered. And so we were going to take a hit. So we continued with it. And so the reservoir sits up the hill, feeds a bunch of the stuff in town. However, I know that it's going to have an effect on some pressures and things within the community. So I'm just curious how we started playing with some of those pressures. What can residents expect? Are they even going to notice anything?
Yes, we have already playing with the pressure distribution. Actually, it's working fine, and I don't think so residents would notice a bit of a difference.
Okay, so residents have no idea that we're doing it, but everything's working the way it's supposed to behind the scenes while we're working through this project. Okay.
But recently, like we have seen few water main breaks around the town. I'm not sure if it's related to that pressure distribution that we are running.
Okay.
But yeah, we are fixing as we find it.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Comments from council? As I see none, we'll move into the rest of our agenda. So first off, we've got a report on a borrowing bylaw. Roland, on page 4 in our package.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. There's 2 reports back to back here, both for short-term operating borrowing bylaws, having to deal with both the Highway Motor Inn and the Slave Lake Inn demolition costs. So both structures have been demolished to remove the hazardous structures located on the property. Both properties were invoiced, and then they had not paid those invoices, and the amounts then that were eligible were transferred to the tax rolls. And until the town can recover those funds, we will need to borrow sufficient funds to cover the cost until such time that they can be repaid. So it just does the note, the operating bylaw cannot extend beyond 3 years. So you set the limit at 3 years. And should the town not receive the outstanding taxes owed, the full amount of the outstanding loan must be budgeted for in the year that it is expected to be repaid.
And then the idea is that through tax sale, hopefully you recoup some of that if they haven't made any effort to pay any of that balance off.
The challenge with both of these is that the year that the loans are set to expire is also basically the first year that the town can start the tax proceedings and acquisition and or other means to take over the property and offer them up for sale.
So we're likely going to take the hit in that year anyway, because of the loan's going to mature. And there's no ability to extend it, to match the timeline?
Not on the operating borrowing bylaws.
Okay.
Again, and we can't strictly just roll that over because that would go against the 3-year limit. You can't just pay off the loan and then reopen another loan on the same function as that. And I guess one additional note there as well is that the current assessed values for the property, while they don't indicate the actual amount that the tax, you could sell it for, are roughly about $1 million to $1.5 million on both properties. So there's some wiggle room there on bringing down that value to still cover the outstanding amounts on each roll.
Okay, so question, can we change a borrowing bylaw? Like right now it's set that our internal operating borrowing bylaw can only do 3 years. Can we go longer? Can we just change that bylaw?
I could go back and take a look to see. However, this is not capital in nature because we're not building anything. We're strictly removing something. So it generally falls under operations. And so operating bylaws by their nature can be no more than 3 years.
So one of the advantages right now of doing this as a borrowing bylaw is that we're not having to dip into our own savings account basically to pay off this amount for these delinquent landowners who seem to just stick us with something. So now what I'm hearing is that no matter what, we're going to get stuck with it because the likelihood of them paying this off is going to be pretty slim when they don't even want to respond to half the stuff we've done already. And so now we're in a spot where we're stuck with this amount 3 years from now that we're going to have to pay because of the MJA process that we're not able to go after a tax sale until all these due diligence pieces have gone. So theoretically, we could overcome that obstacle by just changing our borrowing bylaw, or is it MGA set and we can't play with it?
Yeah, this particular way, the way we're doing it. So what we could do is again, depending on what next year looks like, is we could use internal cash if we have enough, depending on the impacts of COVID, to pay that operating like earlier and carry those costs ourselves. But there's no way to extend the loan right now past the 3-year thing just due to the nature of the transaction.
But theoretically, if we change that bylaw, could we extend it longer than 3 years? Like we're limited by the power of a bylaw that we created, correct?
No, we're limited to the MGA. So laid out on here in
The MGA
256.
does not allow us to change it.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to take the hit no matter what. So all we're doing right now is delaying it 3 years.
Yes. And it's recommended at this time that we do free up our cash flow to, at minimum, finance it for this year. And should we want to revisit that?
Okay. Councillor Brandel.
A couple questions. So what happens if we could structure, so the whole MGA process for the tax sale, you told us that one time is almost 5 years, but this is only 3. So what happens if we didn't take the loan for two years? Can we do that to make it match?
We definitely could. However, due to the current circumstances with COVID on cash flow, I would at least recommend that we proceed with the borrowing this year and then revisit that issue next year when we have a better picture of exactly how many people have paid taxes and what the cash situation is like at that time.
Okay, fair enough. And then one more question. So we have to advertise this.
We do not.
We don't? I thought we did.
Borrowing bylaws that are under 3 years and are operating in nature do not have to be advertised.
Oh, okay.
However, in my communications there, as per MGA, short-term borrowing bylaws do not need to be advertised. However, council may wish to inform the public.
I
Okay.
feel like we've been forming them for months. Counselor Busk and then Counselor Ferguson.
Next question I have for you, Roland, is are the properties in question already delinquent in their tax accounts though? And this process has started from then and we just added to it, or are they caught up in good standing?
I believe both have not paid, are fully up to date as of 2019. So 2019 is outstanding and then 2020, of course, is just kicked in. So that's where it's about 4 years. So by 2023, both properties will have had enough time in the process that we can start to take action.
Okay, Counselor Ferguson.
So we moved over the cost of the demolition over to their tax roll. What is the interest that's charged on that? I just want to make sure that we're not at a disadvantage here by our interest costs of having to borrow, that it's covering sufficiently.
So for this, the current borrowing bylaw for the highway motor in, the estimated annual interest costs at current borrowing rates is $9,450 a year.
Okay, and will we recoup at least that much when it's
No.
when it's transferred over their tax roll? Because we have our own interest that we charge internally on late payments, right?
So interest charges in this nature cannot be added to the tax roll. Only the demolition costs and such costs like legal and stuff like that were able to be transferred to the tax roll. Interest costs to finance the project, whether internally or externally, are not able to be added to the tax roll.
So what's the penalty then for late payment or delinquent payment? I should ask then.
For them or for?
For them.
Yeah, so every year that they don't pay the taxes, they'll get penalized at the same rate. So currently we have the September, October, and the January penalty. So those accumulate on the account, and we're able to deduct those costs from the final sale cost to recoup all those costs, but we're just not able to recoup the costs of borrowing.
Okay. And are those penalties for the demolition at the same rate as it would be for late owing taxes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we transferred it to the tax roll, those amounts become taxes outstanding
Okay.
and are treated
Thank you.
as such.
Okay, so to be clear, the $9,450 in interest payments for the borrowing of this, we cannot recoup to the hotel owners?
No.
That's crazy.
The late payment costs should add up to more than $9,450.
Yeah, because this will be building over the next 3 years.
Because we're still charging the penalty on the total outstanding.
Yeah, because it is a tax, it is owing, and all of those rules still apply to the roll.
Okay. Feel like I get frustrated more and more every time we discuss this. Okay, so the gist of it is though, that we're going to borrow the money, got to do it over 3 years. At some point, we're gonna have to deal with this lump sum. We can't charge the interest, but we're paying they're paying penalties, basically the outstanding balances, which are higher than the interest. And the circus continues. Okay. Other questions? Counselor Ferguson.
I'll make a motion. Bylaw number 14/2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Highway Motor Inn receives first reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Gramack.
That bylaw number 14, 2020, operating short-term boring Slave Lake Highway Motor Inn, receive second reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor King.
That council gives. That council gives unanimous consent to bylaw 14, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Highway Motor Inn, third reading.
Discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Busk.
Make a motion that bylaw 14, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Highway Motor Inn receive third and final reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. And so the next report is just for the other property.
Yes.
Anything new? If not, Councillor King.
That bylaw number 15, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Lakeside Motor Inn receive first reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Councillor Busk.
Make a motion that bylaw 15, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Lakeside Motor Inn receive second reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Councillor Busk.
Make a motion that council gives unanimous consent to give bylaw 15, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Lakeside Motor Inn third reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Councillor McGregor.
That bylaw 15, 2020, operating short-term borrowing Slave Lake Lakeside Motor Inn receives third and final reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, thanks, Roland. Okay, page 16 in our package, awarding of 2020 road maintenance program. Kush is going to run us through that one.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and other present in the room. The purpose of this report is for council to award the contract for 2020 road maintenance program. Back in mid-April, Director of Finance confirmed the availability of $391,000 in BMTG fund. These funds were received in 2014 and could be used to fund a part of this project. It was also confirmed that there would be no adjustment required to the 5-year capital plan. The overall strategy was to use the BMTG fund in conjunction with the annual road maintenance operating fund to fix larger portion of roads in town. A repair estimate for heavily deteriorated sections of road was prepared, and a report was presented in April 30th council meeting to amend the 2020 capital budget to include the project in the amount of $391,000 and $437 to be funded through available funds in BMTG. Administration visited different areas of town with Senior Public Works Operator Dean to prepare initial list of heavily deteriorated road sections. Administration had a plan to quickly get the proposal request out in order to grab best pricing and schedule availability before contractors get committed to other projects. Initial list was prepared before the frost was completely out of this upgrade, and the majority of distressed roads were still covered in water from spring melt off. This limited the ability to determine the extent and scope of work. And due to that, initial estimate ended up a bit higher. The initial estimate also included heavy contingency due to the uncertainty with ongoing pandemic. The list was revisited with the onset of warm weather, and some extent and scope of work were reduced and adjusted. The RFP was posted on Alberta Purchasing Connection on May 22nd. The moderately deteriorated section of roads were projected for inclusion based on the pricing received and availability of budget after the closing date. Good news is that the pricing came in too low due to lack of on-hand work with contractors. And
too low or extremely competitive?
No, too low. I would say low, yeah, and competitive.
Okay.
due to the current, due to lack of on-hand work with the contractors and current state of economy. With that being said, we will now be able to cover a larger portion of deteriorated areas around the town. We received bids from 4 contractors, 2 were local and 2 were out of town. The lowest pricing received is for $140,740 plus GST. The approved amended budget included for this project is $391,437, which is to be completely paid out of BMTG funds. The administration would use BMTG funds in tandem with allotted $100,000 for annual road repairs. Road maintenance work will be done in accordance with Town of Slave Lake policies regarding truck route, noise bylaw, etc. Before start of maintenance work, notices will be posted on Town of Slave Lake website to make residents aware of the construction traffic. Proper signage will be in place at the repair sites. Council could award the contract as presented, or council could decide not to proceed with this work at this time. Our recommendation to council is to make 2 motions. Number 1 is to award the 2020 road maintenance contract to the lowest bidder, which is Pavit Construction, in the amount of $140,740 plus GST. And we have also included a best value assessment sheet attached in attachment A. To include, and the second motion is to include additional sections of road in the maintenance program to take advantage of the pricing and available budget. Thank you.
Okay, so some questions. First off, for my own clarity here. So essentially every year, we do $100,000 worth of annual pothole repair. So for the public that doesn't totally understand, we kind of got 3 different road repair programs that we do. So the first one is you see the guys out there doing general pothole repairs. They were working on 3rd Ave behind the mall there today. That's built into their operational budget, part of what they do. Additionally, we have these big, huge capital projects that we do. We've got a 10-year plan to do a number of those. These are typically anywhere between several $100,000 to up to $3 million, because usually there's some underground going on. But we budget $100,000 for some significant repair work where we're not maybe milling over a whole street, but we've got a section that's really bad, or we've had to fix a water main break, or somebody's been doing some development and had to tie into our system. And so we'll use this $100,000 pot for that. Now, we also have this outstanding grant money that we had from a couple of years ago that council decided in previous meeting that we're going to use towards it. And so we've got 391 plus 100 or 291 plus 100? 300, okay. So we've got basically $500,000, $491,000 worth of work that we're going to do. So we went out and scoped out 491 and it came in at 140, or scoped out
initially we only included 15 sections just to see how the pricing comes in.
Okay.
And our intention was to include additional sections if the pricing, and if we have available budget left.
Okay. So we've got these 15 sections and they came in way lower than we anticipated.
Yep.
Okay. And so now we are going to theoretically award that contract to the lowest bidder,
yep,
as well as use the remaining budget to do increased sections around town.
Yep.
Okay. I have another question with that, but I'll open it up to the rest of council. Councilor Brandel.
So that was the list that you gave us last time, hey?
Yeah.
There was like 14 or 15 items on the list, and the 391 covered like the first 12 or something?
Initially it was, I think, 11 sections, and 4 were left out, which were supposed to be determined. But then when the frost came out, we revisited some sections. There was a movement in the subgrade, and the road came back, some sections came back to its normal shape. The dip was gone, and we adjusted the scope, and we were able to include all 15.
Oh, that does include all 15.
Yeah, all 15,
okay.
yeah.
Good.
Okay, Councilor Busk.
Question for order here. For this motion, then, if we were going to add additional work, would we not have somewhere in there the amount of total budget available to spend up to this amount? and not just make the motion for $140,000? How does that work? Help me out.
Because we've already made a motion during the capital spending with the previous report that we had done, we've already said that this is the amount that we're going to budget. And that's why the motion is said pricing up to the available budget, correct?
Yeah, when I brought my report there, we amended the 2020 capital budget, include the full amount of the grants to pay for road rehabilitation.
So you're right, but technically we've already done it.
Fair enough.
Other questions? Okay, we're gonna fix more road, put our money to good use. I don't know, it sounds like a home run. So I will just say though, what would be amazing for communication is if when we finally determine, because theoretically we're gonna get more than 15 now for bang for our buck.
Yes.
We determine where all those are. We had a map or something to highlight the different sections. We could plaster that out and say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Sure.
So people can kind of understand and expect and do whatever. But I think it's important to be clear to the public that this is significant patching work. This is not major construction overlay.
Yeah.
We're just going to do a lot more of it than we normally do.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor McGregor.
So just clarify for me then. So this company know that we're going to ask them to do more work?
Yes, actually what I did
Okay.
is I had everyone, all the contractors that were interested in this bid came into site. I took them around town, showed them spots, and I told them clearly, like, look, we had 15 sections in the bid, but if you give us good pricing and if we have available budget, then we may go for additional sections. So that was already been made aware initially.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Ferguson.
We'll make a motion. Council directs administration to award the 2020 road maintenance contract to Pava Construction in the amount of $140,740 plus GST.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Gramlich.
Council directs administration to include additional sections of roads in the maintenance program to take advantage of the pricing and available budget.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It is carried. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, page 20 in our package. Gordon's going to talk about public streaming, public notice, council meetings.
The purpose of the report is to review the procedure for notifying general public about meetings of council. And as we know, we have been operating under the maximum number of 15 people in council chambers, and that's going to change shortly, but we will still have to social distance. So the question to council is that pursuant to 197 and 606 of the Municipal Government Act, does council wish to continue putting the council meetings over the YouTube, or to open up to a maximum number of citizens to come to council chambers? The other part of this is that Chris Brown is to bring forward a report as to additional cameras and microphones within the council chambers so that it can be more easily rebroadcast. And so he is currently working at getting an estimate together, whether that happens next week or in July sometime. Hopefully that's here shortly. So it's presented for council's deliberation whether you wish to continue streaming or whether you wish to hold live.
Okay, Councillor Brandel.
I don't know if Chris can hear us, but I'm wondering if he has been tracking the YouTube hits, because people can re-watch it too. They don't have to watch it live, and YouTube keeps track of that. So wondering what our views are.
Yes, we can request that from Chris to provide it to council.
Okay,
You want me to just provide it now there, Gordon?
That would be even better, Chris.
even better.
So I can say that the very first meeting that we did stream on YouTube, we did see a re-watch of it of more than 240 times. Since then, it has slowly declined, but we're usually in the 75 to about 150 range per council meeting.
Well, that's more than we get to a normal council meeting, so I think it's worth it for sure.
Yeah, those numbers always can seem to blow my mind actually a little bit, right? Like, it's amazing how many people watch those videos, which is great. You know, it's we're spending all this time and energy here. It's nice to know that people are watching. My question was going to be too, like, we're going to spend a bunch of money here in equipment and go through this process and do whatever for 10 people that are maybe watching it right now. But there is a benefit of having it recorded that people can watch it again later. So, you know, if we're seeing some traction there by people being able to do that, you know, as long as it's not crazy expensive, I think it's kind of the way councils are working these days, right? It's my two thoughts. Sorry, Councillor McGregor.
Yeah, I don't quite enjoy, I don't watch YouTube, but I kind of like the fact that it is live. I think sometimes we get complacent, and if you listen to the first 5 minutes of this one, you'll find out not all of us are politically correct all the time. And so I think we should keep going this way. You know, bring us a price to see, but I think it's possible to find some unrestricted surplus money to keep this going. I think we'll have some good views, especially come winter time. And again, we only have 18 months left of this council. So I think it's a good start moving forward to keep it. And it also keeps the community better informed. Sometimes we only get little tiny snippets written about all the reports and all the committees that we're on, but you can listen to more if you take it or leave it, but at least you get a better report sometimes than what gets published out there. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, there's lots of times too, the public will ask me about something and I'll be like, yeah, you wouldn't believe what that councillor said. I can be like, go back to this edition, rewind to 22 minutes in. It's crazy.
Meanwhile, half those hits have been marijuana. 238.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, exactly. I have to go back and try to remember, should I wear a different shirt today or should I wear the same? And on a serious note though, I would say that anything that we invest in, Chris, you know, eases up the issue. So like, you know, public doesn't really see it in here, but there's like tripods and cameras and laptops everywhere in here. Like, it'd be nice to have something that was a little more simplistic or something that came down from the ceiling that could still span and always be set up rather than it being a big production every time. So I'd rather pay a little bit extra for some simplicity to make it easier for our staff and us to actually function and use it. So I get one of the questions I would ask though, like if the equipment fails one time, theoretically, as per the MGA, we're not in default. We can still hold the meeting, correct?
No, we're not in default. We've held our council meeting, and it's a choice of people whether they wish to attend or not, and they can still attend.
Okay.
The only time is if his Zoom crashes, then yeah, we have to terminate and start over again.
Because you're not giving them an option. But theoretically, if we are meeting in public and there's some technical difficulties, we can still legally continue with the meeting and basically claim that we've got a malfunction. So there should be like a malfunction button right about here. Yes. Okay. Other questions, comments? Councilor Graham.
I'm all for streaming it live too, but the second part of it is having people attend meetings regularly in person, and I'm open to that. We don't get a lot of people anyway, so if administration's comfortable, I'm fine with having the general public back in here.
Yeah, I would echo that in the sense that, you know, respectfully, we usually get one or two kind of thing like that. If we had 10 people trying to fit into this room right now and keep everybody distanced, I think that would definitely rub up on some people's comfort levels, and maybe that's too many. But you know, to have one or two, you know, typically it's the Bartletts who have always been our biggest fans, and you know, a representative from the newspaper, and so to fit those 2 or 3 people in here, I don't think is problematic. But you know, sometimes we get a hot topic and literally there's 30 to 40 people in here for 8 to 12 minutes for that topic until they leave again. You know, in that circumstance, I think we'd have to, you know, leave them in the gallery. Sorry, Councillor Buss, did you have your hand up?
I was just saying that we have an alternative seating area out in the lobby where they could go there if we have overflow as well.
Agreed. You know, so it could be something that we said, you know, we had seating in here for maximum up to X or whatever else, and the overflow would have to go there. But I don't think anybody needs to stress themselves out by fitting them into this room.
And if you're having any public hearing, you can always have people register ahead of time. And as one person finishes their presentation, they can leave and the other people can come and make presentation.
So I guess the direction there would be, as I'm hearing nothing different, if we can provide some flexibility, you know, I think that would be a good opportunity. However, you know, let's not kill ourselves to make that happen. Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Councillor Brandel?
I move that we receive this report as information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So behind the scenes, Chris is working on this, and we'll at a future meeting, we'll discuss in more detail what it's going to look like and what it's going to cost. Next, Highway 88 pedestrian crossing.
Previously, this subject came to council. I had a chance to talk to Ms. Paula Campbell of Alberta Transportation, and she stated that at one time, a long time ago, they promised to paint the line markings on the highway and put up warning signs. However, things changed and we didn't proceed with that. And the province put in cutbacks to their spending. And in addition to that, all roadside development, which is, this is one for the Ball Diamonds, has been transferred to the Stony Plain office. And we had previously got an email from the, I can't hardly pronounce the name, but
From the representative of the province for that department, yeah.
yeah. And so they have said you have to, in order to put it there, you have to have a engineering design done and come forward, and you have the details previously. Also, in addition, I sent a note to Mike McKenney detailing that and suggesting that the council would be happy to meet with Sawridge First Nation to continue on with next steps on this process. And so the two options are to proceed or with either the meeting with First Nation or the engineering study that was previously proposed.
Okay. Discussion from council, questions? Councillor Brandel.
I think keeping the chief and the Sawridge First Nation informed of you know, our plans is probably a good neighborly thing to do. So I think we should go ahead on that. And then I'll probably just make a motion.
Go ahead.
The town council approached the Sawridge First Nation to meet and discuss the pedestrian crossing at the intersection of Highway 88 and Caribou Trail.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. So let's meet with our neighbors there before we get too carried away. Okay. Northwest Alberta Electric Vehicle Charging Network. So this was a request that we got from the town of Edson. So essentially they're putting together a program. They referenced two other ones in here that they've seen basically proceed already. One in the Kootenays and one in southern Alberta. Luckily our interim CAO came from southern Alberta, has a little bit of information about this, might be able to answer a couple questions. But the overarching goal is that they want to basically increase the number of charging stations from basically zero, because I don't think there's many in Northwest Alberta or Northern Alberta, but create a network that they can then market it not just beyond the city of Edson, but throughout the whole region. And so they are looking for partners. And so they've got it basically in a a phased approach, what they've seen done in the other two regions where they did this. They started out with $30,000 worth of seed money to basically, you know, kind of justify and do the proposal, I guess. There's a bunch of grants that are potentially available. You know, search and find that funding. And then there's some implementation funding that goes ahead where they actually build these stations throughout the region. So in Edson's letter, it says that they want to be, I want to get the right wording here. A regional collaborator, but it says that they'd be like a primary lead in the project. It's the actual word that they use for it. I don't know, I'll find it here afterwards. But long story short, they're looking for these other partners to come on board and basically come up with 30,000. Edson doesn't, the town of Edson doesn't outlay in here, unless I missed it, exactly how much money they're willing to contribute. It's more, let's all get together and then split it accordingly and figure things out, just looking for interest at this point. Was that a good summary? Gordon, you want to add anything?
No, essentially it is just a fund to get her started. And so council could choose a nominal sum, whether it's $500 or $1,000, to say that you're in support of this and notify Edson that you wish to do it. In southern Alberta, they have put in the stations right across from Lethbridge up to Calgary and across to the border, because it is, you know, the Kootenai one is, they probably have more units in the small communities in the Kootenai district than we do in southern Alberta. But Crow's Nest Pass recently received a fast charging station that you can get it done within that hour, I think it takes, and it's fully charged. And you can carry on to Fernie and all the rest of the down the road and recharge your car on. So.
Yeah, so to be clear, this is the idea is for traffic guests, people live here, people that work here, passing through, that they have a network that they could actually drive electric vehicles through northwestern Alberta. I asked Gordon actually this question offline, so I should add it, that I was curious to know who pays for the electricity. And so basically it's a pay-to-play system where you pull into the charge station, no different than pay for your gas, put in your credit card, you charge it for an hour. So there's not, it's not like the municipality is giving away free power to anyone that's driving through. And so that's the system, obviously, that these users, you know, because respectfully, I don't know a ton about this. So this is the system that those users are used to. So we wouldn't be paving the way here by any means, that they're used to paying for that product. We're just basically allowing that product to exist in our community. Thoughts, Councillor Brandel?
Curious if it's up to us to build the actual station in our community, or would that be funded through all these grants?
The stations are all funded through grants in southern Alberta, so they're following along the same gist. We just have one station in Crow's Nest Pass. The town itself put in a slow charge station elsewhere in the community.
Okay, Councillor Busk.
Way society's going, this looks like a possible ECDev project. Once we get our economic development up and running, that might be something that they might be able to talk with Edson about. Like I say, that might bring more tourists to the area if they've got an insight that they can charge their vehicles in our geographic area. So might not be a bad thing to look at. I'm like, if it's not $30,000 they're looking at it from us and a nominal amount, I'm more open to that, as this is an unbudgeted amount. But the idea in general is okay, especially if they've done it in southern Alberta. We're not reinventing the wheel.
Other questions, comment, Councillor Ferguson?
To your knowledge, has this been done at all in private enterprises, or has it all been through public?
Well, that southern Alberta one was through public funds, but there are other stations that are on private property.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, I gotta be honest, like for a letter of support, knowing that a different municipality is gonna spearhead a lot of the work for $1,000, if there's an opportunity to get a station through grant funding here or whatever else, and it's another amenity that we can add to the municipality, it's probably a worthwhile investment. You know, I think it's obviously it's something that's not gonna happen overnight. I think having our Rec Dev group can help work and flush some of the stuff out as we get closer to, but they're looking for commitment because there's a grant deadline in July. That I think that we should make a commitment now or not make a commitment just so that they can proceed or not proceed depending there. So. Other thoughts, Councillor Brandel?
Yeah, the way I read it was that they were actually asking for $30,000 and I wasn't a fan. So I think the only way that I'd want to do this is if we have nominal funding into it. So.
Yeah, the only risk would be at this point if they came back to us later and said, hey, there's only 3 other municipalities, so, you know, we all got to split it $8,000 each or whatever it works out to. Then we at that point, we'd say, hey, you know, we're interested at that price point or we're not. You know, and theoretically, if they only have 2 or 3 municipalities that are interested, maybe there isn't enough interest in Northern Alberta to make it worthwhile. Yeah, so I'm thinking a nominal fee there to start out with. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll make a motion that we send a letter of support to the town of Edson for the development of the Northern Alberta Electric Vehicle Charging Network and commit $1,000 to be funded from unrestricted surplus in the event that they get enough funds to start the program. Make sense? Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Sorry, Joanna, that's clear. You got that? Good, perfect. If not, you can just YouTube this later and rewind to make sure you got it right, eh? Woo. Okay, moving right along. Okay, consulting, legal, engineering services.
Your worship, further to town council's verbal request, they asked for a review of our existing legal and engineering consultants. Lori and Kush have provided additional information, which I've put into the memo. As stated, Brownlee has worked with the town of Slave Lake for the past 20 years. And it could be longer than that, depending on memories of some of the staff members. In my mind, they're probably considered the premier legal municipal firm in the province. There are others that could fulfill council's wishes. You can see the types of topics that they have provided advice on. It is a lengthy list, not exhaustive, but the also noted we get templates from Brownlee and get those renewed every so often to ensure that we got the current law, and we're using that when we ask people to sign utility right-of-ways and other such agreements. Regards to the engineering services, Kush has put together an attachment, and if council wants, he is prepared to talk to his attachment after I finish here. Both firms, in my mind, have their full service firm. It is not an individual solicitor or engineer that we have access to, and so that provides that opportunity to use those on a regular basis. And as noted, if council wishes to contract either of your legal business or your engineering business, you could select a particular issue that comes forward in the future to do that and put out an RFP on both cases. As in regards to engineering, we have a huge number of projects that I would say you should carry on with associated until those projects are completed. And if you choose to go elsewhere, then select a future project to do it. Because you don't want to double up the design costs of any project. Also, I asked Calvin to come and talk to council in camera on one engineering firm that we did hire, which wasn't totally successful. And that would have to be in camera to provide you with current information. So it's presented for council's information and deliberation as to how you want to approach this in the future.
Sounds good. But your recommendation is don't mess with the system.
Well, I've worked with both companies over the years and have found them top rate and but I've also worked with other suppliers, more so in the engineering side rather than the legal. I have been in communities that have provided certain level of business to the local solicitor. And then when it became a lawsuit or something more challenging, that's when we went to Brownlee and used their services for that.
Okay. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Ferguson.
Just more of a comment, for myself, these are two of the biggest things that I consistently hear about from residents is, possibly reviewing our legal costs and our engineering costs. So it's a box that I'd like to peek in. I understand administration is probably familiar with, the two groups and have worked extensively with them, but realistically, probably no one from our group has ever reviewed the contracts. So it's something that I'd like to look into just for peace of mind for myself.
Okay. So you're saying bring the contracts that we have with them. But a lot of these are project specific, correct?
Well, I understand some of them are project specific, but I understand too, some are on like, I believe Brownlee's on retainer and stuff like that. I'd like to see what else is out there and for peace of mind and see maybe, and perhaps there's a savings that comes with it as well.
So you're basically saying send out an RFP for our legal and engineering costs?
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Be quiet here. Okay.
Well,
Councillor Graham.
I'll echo what Bryce is saying. I won't leave him hanging there. I don't think it hurts to peek inside the box and see what else is out there. And maybe we circle back and stay with what we know, and maybe they give us a reduced rate as well. So it doesn't hurt to look.
Like other municipalities must, advertise this ever so often. Like I remember being on council and it's coming to us, and we signed a retainer contractor agreement with them that we had went out and looked for quotations previously, and these guys came in at the best price. So, it has been years for sure. But other municipalities must do this on a regular basis, every 4, 5, 6, 7 years, or they just stay with everybody till.
Well, if they are competent and you have no problems with either of those consultants, then it's accepted that you carry on. Yes, I've been involved with communities where the engineer that won an RFP didn't prove out to be very successful, and the town had to sue them. And so that is also there. Cush's memo also notes the pricing that the associated has provided to the community for a number of years. And it's quite a number of years. They were here when I was in Slave Lake last time. and did all of the fire
You were here long before that.
rehab stuff within our community. So, I leave that. And quite possibly you'll get percentages. Some consultants will try to buy a job, as we all know. We all have that too. So,
Doesn't always work out. Agreed. Okay, heard from two of council. Anybody else? Councillor McGregor.
You know, I don't know if I'm, like, if I need to even worry about that engineering part, but I sure would like to put an RFP out for some different legal services information. Like, we pay a lot of money in legal fees. Remember when we were going to make a post about who cost us how much money in Slave Lake? That'd be fantastic now that we're live. And I'm about ready today in that kind of itchy mood too. So yeah, no, I would be okay with putting out an RFP to just check it out and do it. Why not? They've been with us, I understand, for many, many years, and their work is great. But sometimes in this kind of economic, maybe it's time for a little shakeup and see what other people have to offer us as well. Engineering is a tough one. I mean, I'd hate to get down somewhere where we got a road that, you know, heads to the sky instead of straight, but legal, I could sure wrap my head around.
There'd be some good tourism in a road that heads to the sky. If I'm seeing nothing, I would echo that. Like, I think it would be hard pressed to get a company that can compete on the engineering on a bigger scale with the stuff that's there. There's a lot of knowledge that comes from that. I think it saves us a lot of money. That being said, there has been some issues in the past where all that knowledge didn't filter all the way through, and it costs us a little money too. But I will say I'm a little bit more interested in the legal than I am on the engineering, because I definitely, you know, seeing what we pay for legal for some of the stuff and the product that we get for that, I'm not questioning Brownlee's skill level at any point, but I will say that some of it doesn't seem the history and knowledge of the municipality, you know, you compare that against engineering and knowing where we did stuff, what we did and how we did it, becomes less of an impact. And maybe there is some cost savings there. So because we haven't done it in a long time, I don't mind doing it for both. Keeps everybody honest and that sort of thing. But it would be interesting to hear what kind of feedback we get. Other questions, comments? Okay, so the next thing would be, if we're all wanting to peek in that box, is that we would direct it. What's that?
a motion.
Motion. We would direct administration to prepare an RFP. Well, it would be an RFP or RFQ. Essentially to be able to put apples to apples, right? You're going to be looking for hourly rates and things like that, correct?
That's correct.
So RFP or RFQ?
Q.
Okay. We would direct administration to prepare an RFQ for engineering services and legal services. And I guess, so to be clear, do we want both? Let's do them. There's other thoughts here.
Yes, I would like both.
Seeing some enough heads moving that it sounds like both. Okay. Sorry, we're going to direct administration to create an RFQ for engineering and legal services for the town of Slave Lake, to be advertised on APC. I guess we don't even need to say where it needs to be advertised. You guys will sort that out. And bring back that information to a future council meeting. I can make that motion. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, it's carried. Okay, let's jump into our committee reports. First off, intermunicipal hasn't met. Watershed. Did you guys have a meeting a week or so ago? 3-hour one, I thought. Okay. Chamber of Commerce hasn't met. Housing Authority
We meet next week.
meets next week. Health Committee.
Okay, hello, John.
Okay, you gotta turn on your microphone.
Okay, so Tri-Council Health, our last meeting was May 14th, so some of these sometimes are a little outdated, but I'll give you the report that I had. So we had a medical doctor that was starting their assessment. So it's a family doctor that was starting their assessment then. So that usually leads 6 to 8 weeks. And then we will have our 9th doctor here by the fall. So I had reported that before. That's still status quo. We still continue to deliver babies in Slave Lake. So that's wonderful. We've had a little staff turnover in some nurses. We continue to work with EMS on the bay that they live in. I know there has been no capital funding for, for Alberta Health Services and that kind of stuff, but we will continue to be loud and clear and champion for them as long as we need to. We've had some teleconsulting with doctors, and that seems to actually be working well. So stage 2, I guess now will maybe mean some more services will be open. So our next meeting is in July, so we'll have a better update for that. Mental health is on the rise, and we were down a mental health worker. So that's kind of, across everywhere. Mental health is on the rise, and AHS and the school have both had some changes in their the way they fund health and mental health. So we'll leave that one, but make sure you check out to your local trustees what's going on in your schools in the school division, because some of you parents sending your kids back to school might want to know what's happening there with nutrition and mental health. And there's some panel work being done right now amongst the doctors, as we've had 2 from Canuso that will be retiring. So they're working on that panel work to make sure who has the capacity to take on their patients and who wants to, and how all that kind of stuff works. So they've been working on that. We for sure have seen that our system is overused and abused with COVID and being able to get a doctor's appointment or appointment with the nurse practitioner on the same day. That people are either abusing the system, and with even having walk-ins closed for a while, Emerge was up a little, but nothing to the extent of the people that use the system. So, and the community come together and had dropped off a big box of face shields and some Dr. Souls insoles at the hospital. So that was a nice thing for the community to do. I'm not exactly sure where they come from, so I don't want to make the wrong assumption and say that. But so thank you to the community for thinking of them, and thank you for their continued work in the health field. So our next meeting is July 9th, and then we'll have some more updates on kind of what it looks like after stage 1 and now stage 2 opening up.
Okay, questions, comments? I will just add there that I saw in the newspaper here, obviously we've heard of Terry O'Keefe and John Keaveney reaching retirement at some point in the future. And I saw it in the paper that they're basically saying they formally announced that August they'll be finishing up, and 2 long-standing physicians in our community that looked after the health of this community for a long time. So I wish them very much the best in their retirement. They've definitely earned it. And it will be a big hole to fill for the region, but excited for them to be able to take the next step in their life for sure. So thank them for all their service. Tourism.
We haven't formally met, although we're looking for partners. Actually, icebreakers, we're looking for partners for some entertainment towards the end of the year, end of the summer. So maintaining the social distancing kind of thing. So more to come on that. We can't really say much at this point yet.
Okay, potential community project, excited to hear. Library.
Library. So online program has been very successful for the library. They're going to continue throughout the summer, and they're also looking at going forward, maybe keeping that on, especially when it's really cold up here in the winter and stuff, having online programming going forward. So that's nice. The 2 scholarships were chosen. So the Slave Lake Legacy Scholarship was taken over by the library board. I think I talked about that last year when we took it over. So we picked our 2 recipients for the 2020 school year grads. I haven't told them, so I can't announce it publicly because I haven't told the grads yet. We're waiting for all of our safety standards to come into place. So all the things that are required for libraries to open up. When they do open up, they're probably still going to be opening up by appointment only for a while. It's a lot of work and a lot of different people use the library. And so we're just kind of, worried about some safety and things like that, and keeping it clean, and how do you keep books clean, and do people touch 100, and then do you wipe them down, and there's all those things to think about. So appointment only will be how it is. They have been offering curbside recycling, and they also did a big Facebook post on exactly how to do it. So that's been very successful and been busy for people that like that. We've been updating some of our policies just to reflect now, some of the words like pandemic and those kind of stuff in it, as policies now have changed. So we're looking at that. And we have
The old pandemic policy.
The old pandemic policy. Yeah. We could call it COVID. We will call it a few things probably in our time. And we're doing the library manager's performance review in July. So it's kind of what we've been up to. Okay, questions, comments? Nothing. I forgot one in health there, Joy, that personally that I would take back from me, that they've been doing, some of this more virtual. Physicians have the opportunity to connect with their patients more virtually, because that was a thing that we had kind of advocated for a number of years, to say, it is very frustrating for people from Slave Lake to go down for a pre-op surgery appointment for 4 minutes. If you're lucky, you get to spend with the physician, and then basically blow your entire day. So my wife actually had to go through one here not too long ago. It was fantastic, right? They schedule, they phone, done. She goes over the stuff in 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, probably gets more time with them than when we're in there, and they're all backed up through. I think it's great. So seeing the province expand some of that stuff, I thought was fantastic. And the only reason I bring it up is because I have seen some stuff online there that people are quite negative about the idea. And I would hazard a guess that most of them live in the city and drive 22 minutes to a hockey game and find it very difficult there to deal with the traffic. Try living how the rest of 90% of the rest of Alberta lives. So I think it's great. So keep advocating for it. Yeah, for sure. And we have a steering committee meeting here in a couple weeks in June. So we'll be talking about that for sure. So I'll bring back some more information in July on that one.
Push for more. If they're opening the door, wedge your foot in there and have 3 people try and barge through. Naming advisory.
Have not met.
Community futures.
We haven't met. We have our AGM next Thursday. And just a note that Community Futures is taking applications for sole proprietor businesses or family-run businesses for the new business government loan.
Okay. Questions?
Rebecca, at the AGM, is that when people that would like to be on the board would come to the meeting, or how does?
Yes.
That would be, okay. Okay.
At the AGM, it's going to be here in council chambers, 10 o'clock on the 18th.
Okay, Joy, anything with CEC?
Yeah, I did. Hey, I rock and rolled here this week or these last bit. So CEC, so lots of staff changes, moving and shuffling around the college. You'll notice some of that coming. Wow. Like I think for our board, we had, I think almost every person that does the administrative work and all the executive work was new at this meeting. So, that's kind of crazy. Convocation has been postponed for them. I guess they'll be joining in with next year's. some of the challenges they've been facing, you know, for some of their students with Wi-Fi, no device, students with a device but no Wi-Fi, students with no device and no Wi-Fi. So they've had some parking lot Wi-Fi, which has been helping. And they also got all their students like a Chromebook or a laptop or whatever to do their work. And they worked with their IT department. So hats off to them. That's a big job. And, you know, it was good, right? I mean, because they're a distance learning college anyway for most of their stuff, that works really well. So, you know, I think they'll be probably farther ahead than some of the other universities going back in September because they already do a lot of distance learning. So, you know, they're not as worried, but of course it's still going to look different. We're shrinking in the trades, which is a scary thought for this part of the region where we live, big time. So the province sets the number of seats that you can take in trade, and we also really need to push trade in our public and, well, private, I guess, but public education people. So, and also for education, dual credit took a big hit as well. So I know dual credit's been a huge program in this community, helped many young women and men become very successful in jobs at a young age. So I think we need to really pay attention what's happening in health and education in this province and keep pushing for trades. We are never going to be a province that's going to lack tradespeople. We're always going to need them. So something that's high on my radar and which I will keep on CEC as well as champion for education to make sure that we keep on top of that.
Okay, questions, comments? I'll just throw out that I had a conversation with the president of the college there a couple days ago. And first off, I was excited to hear that Anne is sticking around a little bit longer. So she announced her retirement in September, but is going to help through the transition of them finding somebody else. I think she's been a fantastic addition to Northern Lakes College. So I was delighted to hear that. One of the things she did caution me though behind the scenes, and it's unfortunate that we're doing this live because I really don't want to butcher it, but I'm doing it on my head and I didn't take any notes. But it's around the fact that there's some pushback from the post-secondary ministry there to maybe combine some of these regional colleges or universities and that sort of stuff, maybe having them under one umbrella. And so the pushback has been, you know, there's a lot of autonomy that comes with each own individual university or college's programming and their style. I think we're very fortunate to have Northern Lakes College in our community. One of the things I will say is that, you know, we all know that if you can grow your own, you're more likely to keep the people that you got. And I would hazard a guess that there's not an institution out there right now that offers more diverse flexibility for their students than Northern Lakes College to deliver programming. And so sometimes you might have someone that calls himself a regional college, but basically you show up on our door and take the programming, and if not, we're not delivering it. Whereas Northern Lakes College really take an approach that, you know, if we only got one student here, one there, whatever, we can do some virtual stuff and still deliver that program, which is fantastic for these rural municipalities that exist. And so there is them working with some other northern institutions to basically say, you know, maybe we can put ourselves under some kind of umbrella together, but still keep our autonomy. But just something to stick a feather in or stick a pin in as we're talking to ministers in the future that, you know, to lose that institution or to change the way they deliver programming or force our people to go outside this community or limit the amount of programming that they can get is not in Slave Lake's best interest. So we'll continue to advocate and support their goal of being them, which I think is important for our region. You know, we always talk about economy and we say that we're, you know, we're oil and gas or we're forestry. We are both of those things, but we have to recognize too that Slave Lake is fortunate to have an economic sector that has a big post-secondary group that provides jobs, that provides money into our economy, as well as, you know, they're having this big provincial building next door and the jobs and things that it generates, that we are quite diverse, and I think that's why sometimes we weather the storm better than other communities of similar size. That, you know, we need to make sure that we keep these anchor economic people in our community. So just throwing that on the radar, that if all of a sudden you're hearing conversations about that, that we're all speaking the same language, and B, if you hear me talking about that, you know what I'm talking about. So with that, sorry, we'll jump into MPC. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, we got two discretionaries, one for a home or two home-based businesses, one hair salon and one spray tanning studio.
Okay.
I think that was everything. We extended the log decks that were in town in an additional 2 weeks as well. Give them the time to clean up and get them out of there. It was about 80% done, I think, when we extended that.
Yeah, I see it's about 99% done right now. So any questions on that? SDB hasn't met. Waste is meeting coming up here right away. Right, we picked a date and then that date's a problem, so we're working on a new date. Okay, I did call the chair there too and stress that we needed it when they felt the same way. So we need to make sure we stay on getting a new date, because I don't think a new date's been proposed yet, correct? No. Okay. Airport. Legacy hasn't met. We are working on setting up our AGM, and there's a couple things to go over. The biggest one that should go on the radar for council right now is that we've been given a request by the Slave Lake Child Care Society to forgive their rent for April and May. And so I don't have the exact amount off the top of my head, but we're into you know, approximately $10,000, $10,000 to $12,000. And what's that? 22 for both, right? Yeah, okay, so $11,000 a month. And they're basically saying, hey, we don't have the money to pay that. And so we'd ask that you forgive it. So that has to go to the board, because it's theoretically a board decision there. But I guess what's unique behind the scenes is that we're the groups that fund the deficit. So those are going to be some very interesting discussions as we move forward. Councillor Ferguson.
Just pointing out, I don't know if it applies to groups like that, about the 75% subsidy for commercial rent for ones who have seen their the revenue decrease. So that might be an option for the board to consider there. That's in place by the federal government and provincial governments. I
did talk to the president, who definitely gave me the inclination that we should go search out some opportunities for sure. So we'll have to see what that looks like and how we're going to do that. Okay, that's a big one. Protective services. Disaster services, Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus. One of them was last week, but I missed it. They had a virtual meeting on Friday, but unfortunately Friday is a pretty busy day in my life and got committed at my job. So I'll bring some information on that. A lot of it was around some stuff with policing and presentation, some updates on what's going on in the world of Caribou, but I'll bring that to a future meeting. So that brings us to an acronym that we're not exactly sure what it is, but High Prairie District Children Council.
And guess what else I did? I even got the Peace Library in that I've been on there for a while. Look at me go, you guys. Like, because it was a Zoom meeting and I didn't have to leave at 6:30 in the morning to be in Grand Prairie. So they're thinking about, especially in winter time, and not keeping that Zoom meeting going. They had a pretty good chair there that can round up those 40, because 40 people on Zoom can be difficult. They did a fantastic job. So, I mean, check. I finally went and attended. I think I've been on this board 2 or 3 years. I feel bad, but.
Sorry, this is the Peace Library?
Yeah, Peace Library. I got Peace Library and this High Prairie one. I got 2 more.
Okay, so
yeah.
we're concentrating on Peace Library.
Concentrating on Peace Library. So they're doing some policies, updates, and then some basic house cleaning. They have little subdivision or ad hoc committees, so they're taking care of that. Did the 2019 year in review, had the auditor there, so that went well. We'll have a new plan of service that will go out for 2022 to 2024 for libraries. That's something we do as well, and then we get community input and usually do a survey and that. It's a little ways away, but they're starting to talk about it now. And the e-resources have been very, very popular. So the libraries across the span that Peace Library entails will probably have to change their budget for those kind of resources, but which is sort of exciting. It's been used. So yeah, I got the Peace Library. Now, High Prairie District Children's Resource Council. So this is the one that I was appointed to in Serena in lieu of ParentLink. So this is a new board. Our AGM is June 29th. Serena and I were both appointed and accepted to be on the board as directors. They are still hiring 2 staff for our area, and the cutoff date was like May 22nd or something like that. So I haven't got an update yet if they've hired anyone or who or whatever, but I don't know if I will anyway. I don't know if that's really in my wheelhouse, but I'm sure someone's going to tell me. They're kind of an umbrella association, and the region is from Smoky River to Wabasca, and they're still looking for a Wabasca representative. So like to sit on their board, they haven't found one. So I'm not exactly sure kind of all the ins and outs about this board, but they're well established and they have people that work for them. They're ready to go. So we just kind of said, whatever you need from us, let us know. If you need us to advocate for something or do stuff or help you in any way, you know, please reach out to myself for the advocation and the lobbying, and Serena for any of the staff work that needs to be done. So yeah, it was a Zoom meeting. We did it. They are on Mondays at like 6:30. I think it's the third Monday or the last Monday of every month. And yeah, so just kind of waiting to see when we hire some people and how we'll move forward in the new approach that the government has for this resource. So yeah, I'll bring you back all the information I can. It's kind of all I had.
Okay, so are they already creating programming or just creating structure right now?
Just creating structure right now. They're just getting their feet on the ground as well. And then of course, COVID put things down because they host kind of things like ParentLink, right? Where you had kids and you all went in and did stuff and some stuff in schools. So all of that's kind of been at a halt. So it's new for them as well. So hopefully going forward and kind of in September, we have our feet on the ground and we're ready to go and do what they need us to do. So yeah.
Okay, questions, comments? If not, motion to accept the committee verbal updates as information. Thank you, Councillor Busk. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Management task list on page 69 of our package. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor King.
I'm just wondering if we have an update on our mission and vision statement signs that were.
Yep, it's been ordered and she's in the process of making it. I had sent out the proof to everyone. And I just ordered it last week.
Perfect.
Okay. Other questions? I see none. Motion to accept the management task list as information. Thank you, Councillor King. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So with that, we will move into, oh no, Mayor's Corner. Okay. So obviously the last week or so was excited last week to go over to St. Mary's. They're trying to do something for, sorry, that's not right, St. Francis. Don't screw that up, Tyler. And they have the gym all set up so the grads can come through. They've got some stuff that they're doing for them. But on an individual basis, it was all decorated. They're doing kind of a video thing. So they have different speakers coming in. They're putting a video together that was kind of a memorial that they can take for every one of the grads. So it's kind of neat. So I went and gave my wisdom. Hopefully there's some better speakers coming forward, but we'll see what happens. I'm getting a lot of little resident feedback on a variety of issues lately, everything from planning and development to trees, to roads and sidewalks. And so, but I will say for the most part, May and June usually is typically crazy with resident feedback, questions, comments, concerns. And it has been somewhat quieter. So I will enjoy that. And maybe it's because of COVID, maybe because people take a look at the big picture. I don't know what it is, but we'll take it. So additionally, Staff Sergeant sent something out to the community there. He's looking for some community feedback in regards to questions and concerns of what's going on with their policing for the next 12 months and where they're targeting their time and effort. And so Chris, our communications guy, had basically said, hey, do you want to do a sit down thing, do a Facebook Live thing? And Staff Sergeant said, yeah, that would be great. And so the two of us are doing something on Thursday at, I want to say, approximately 5 p.m. Chris is probably laughing right now because I'm supposed to have this memorized, but I don't. But I think it's Thursday. He says correct. Okay. Thursday at 5 p.m. we're doing that. We've got about 10 to 12 questions that have come in already. So some good ones for sure to discuss. Yeah, and I have a few other things that have been going on, but they're all for in camera. So with that, I would entertain a motion to go in camera. Thank you, Councillor Busk. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor. Thanks to all the public that have been on here watching, but we will cut you off for the rest of this meeting. Chris, let us know when that's done and we'll take a 5-minute recess.